because we have a true power hour with a wonderful, amazing panel of senators and national leaders from coalition groups. We have Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon joining us. We have Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota here with us. We have Melanie Campbell, the president of the National Coalition of Black Civic Participation here. We have Chris Shelton, the president of CWA. We have Eric Pica, president of Friends of the Earth, and Maurice Mitchell, a leader in the movement for Black Lives and national director of Working Families Party, a wonderful ally here in the state of New Jersey, where I'm based at, but everywhere in the country. If you're joining us on Zoom, please don't forget to let us know where you're calling in from. I am, as I said, from New Jersey. I'm a regional organizer, and I'm joined here tonight by our executive director, Joseph Givargis, who will be co-hosting tonight's Power Hour with Tefra Gebre, who is AFL-CIO Executive Vice President and also the board co-chair of the Democracy Initiative. So again, a very, very powerful hour here. We have Jack joining us from Dallas, Texas. We have Glenn checking in from Bethesda. We have Aaron in Washington. We have Jenny from West Virginia. Hi, Jenny. Bruce. Hi, Bruce from Coral Springs, Florida. We have Josh from New York City. Wow, so many people checking in. This call is building fast. We are just going to give it one more minute. If you're on the phones, please press *3 to let us know if you have a question for our panel. We have an amazing panel of movement leaders who will tell us what we need to do to defend our democracy, to defend our voting rights in this crucial moment. And we will also talk about some critical progressive legislative priorities in Congress. We have Michael from New Jersey. Hi, Michael. We have David checking in from Ypsilanti, Michigan. We have James from Oregon. Hi, James. We have your senator here from Oregon. We have Linda from Fresno, California. And this is it. We are ready to start. Joseph, take it away. Have a fun night, everyone.
Thank you so much, Anna Marta. Good evening, America, and welcome to a special national Organize to Win town hall. Tonight, we're going to talk about our movement's plan to counter right-wing attacks on voting rights, attacks that are happening all across the nation as we speak. And we're going to counter that by passing the For the People Act in the United States Senate. That is the topic of tonight's town hall. My name is Joseph Givargis. I am the executive director of Our Revolution, and I'll be co-hosting tonight's call.
And I'm Tefra Gebre. I'm the executive vice president of the AFL-CIO and proud to be the co-chair of the Democracy Initiative. I'll be co-hosting this event with Joseph tonight. Tonight, we'll be joined by Senator Amy Klobuchar, Senator Jeff Merkley, and movement leaders from the National Coalition for Black Civic Participation, the Communication Workers of America, Friends of the Earth, and the Movement for Black Lives. Sisters and brothers, our groups represent the multi-racial working class coalition that helped make the 2020 elections the highest voter turnout election in over a century, and propelled Democrats to power by winning the White House, the United States Senate, and the US House of Representatives. But now, as we head into the 2022 midterm, the Republican minority is going all out to undermine our governing majority.
That's right, Tefra. Republicans are echoing Donald Trump's fictional narrative that our electoral system is rigged. The truth is that Republicans aren't really concerned about voter fraud. The reality is Republicans understand that the only way for them to win again, for them to win in 2022, is to suppress the vote, is to disenfranchise as many voters as possible. And that's why right-wing Republicans in Florida, in Texas, in Georgia, Arizona, and other critical states are moving sweeping measures to restrict voting rights and suppress turnout. Last week, Our revolution surveyed our members to ask them, what are the top priorities that you want Congress to address? Thousands responded, and the results were overwhelming. The number one issue that progressives want Congress to act on immediately is to protect voting rights. Our members understand that protecting our governing majority is the only path to pass progressive legislation, to expand healthcare, to tackle climate change, to reform labor laws. If we want progress, we have to stay in power. It's that simple. And that's why our movement is mobilizing to pass the For the People Act. We've got to do everything in our power to safeguard the integrity of our electoral system, because we know the masses of people are with us. And this transformative legislation will counter the GOP attack on voting rights by expanding voter registration. It'll push back on partisan gerrymandering, and it'll eliminate big money in politics. Look, it's a big bill, but the point of this bill is very straightforward. It's very simple. It is to do everything possible to guarantee the fundamental right of every American to vote in a free and fair election. Tomorrow, the Senate Rules Committee is going to hold the markup of the For the People Act. And we're honored tonight to be joined by Senator Amy Klobuchar, the chair of that committee, who's going to tell us a little bit more about what's in that piece of critical legislation and what we need to do in order to pass it. Welcome, Senator.
Well, thank you so much, Tafari, and thank you for your work on behalf of the workers of America. Thank you to Joseph and all the members of the Democracy Initiative and Our Revolution. A little shout out for one of my favorite board members of Our Revolution, Keith Ellison of Minnesota, who, if you can imagine, I've talked to many times over the last few weeks, and he just did the most amazing public service to the country in how he handled the prosecution of Derek Chauvin. And the redemption, really, for so many of us in our state and across the country. It's not over yet. The real redemption, to not confuse accountability with justice, the real justice will be passing the George Floyd policing bill. And now we turn to something that's as important for justice. And I cannot thank your members enough for all you have done to get this to the point where we are. The Senate Rules Committee, honestly, it's kind of been a sleepy place. I never got to chair it till this last few months. And we are having the very first markup of a major election bill as far back as I could see in the history of the Rules Committee. We had a major hearing about this. And one of the Republicans actually said, when I was trying to allow a witness to complete his answer, he said to me, "That's unprecedented." I said, "No, you know what's unprecedented? What's unprecedented is that we're actually doing something in this committee and doing something when it comes to voting." One of the things that I was listening to the remarks earlier, and I can't tell you how much one thing rings true to me. We won that last election. We won in Georgia, thanks to your work. I was just talking to Bernie about this tonight at our leadership meeting. We won because of progressive ideas and progressive values. And usually when the other party that doesn't win loses an election for presidency and loses the Senate, they step back and reevaluate their policies, they reevaluate their candidates, they reevaluate how they can reach people better. And not this time right now. These guys are actually doubling down, as you see what's going on over in the House with the Liz Cheney issue. They are doubling down, and they've decided that the one way they're going to win is by stopping people from voting who voted in that last election. Raphael Warnock, I thought, said it best in his maiden speech. I got to sit out there and hear this incredible speech on the Senate floor when he said, "Some people don't want some people to vote." That's what's going on here. And so the way I talk about this bill is that it is a bill to make sure that our democracy works for people, not for special interests, not for billionaires, and not even for the politicians themselves. And the three pillars of the bill is to set basic national standards when it comes to voting and making sure Americans can vote the way that they learned they like to vote, with many options: early voting, vote by mail, the ability to same-day register. All of these things, in one way or another, because of the pandemic, people were allowed to vote in different ways that they hadn't done before, and we saw record turnout. Now what you see is 300 plus bills, 350 plus bills across the United States being introduced to limit that vote. And by the way, it is not just Georgia. And my favorite moment of this last few months was when Stacey Abrams was asked by Senator Kennedy in the Judiciary Committee, well, what exactly was wrong with the Georgia bill? And she just kept listing them in her beautiful way and listing things and listing things. And, oh, that's enough. He says, no, there's more, Senator, there's more. So you have Georgia, you have Florida, you have Texas that has now passed a bill through the House and the state Senate. But guess what, guys? 29 of these bills have passed at least one House in the United States. And so for them to say, oh, this isn't really a big deal, it's a really big deal. And it's exactly why we need those national standards for voting. The second thing the bill does is reduces the power of big money in our elections by ending secret spending by billionaires and special interest. That is the public finance piece. That is the really, really, really important piece when it comes to the Disclose Act with the dark money. And then finally, making anti-corruption reforms to reduce the influence of special interest lobbyists and ensure that politicians work for the people, not for themselves. So that's how I talk about the bill, and that's what's happening tomorrow. And I'll give you the insight, because I don't even know if this is public yet, but the Republicans have now filed the date that they had to file by 5 o'clock today. They have filed, and we're not surprised by this, we knew it was coming, something like 150 amendments to this bill. We have a major managers package that we put out that we worked really hard on, listening to Secretary of State's, how can we make the bill better? And we did all that, and people are on board with that. And they have instead, you can just imagine, Ted Cruz himself has 40 amendments. So it is my job tomorrow to chair this hearing. McConnell is on this committee, as is Chuck Schumer, who I just talked to, and he wants everyone to know this is a huge priority for him. That's why he called this Senate File 1, right? And we are moving this bill. Now, it's a tied committee. You can't have like Kamala come in and cast the extra vote on a committee. She can do that on the floor. So my job is to keep the bill together. We have all our members on board. They're all co-sponsors, including our two newest members. Thank you, California, Senator Padilla, as well as Senator Ossoff. Thank you, Georgia. And then we also have Jeff Merkley, who you're going to hear from shortly. The incredible leader of this bill is on our committee. So we are all united behind this bill, including Senator Warner and Senator Angus King, who are more in the moderate camp in the Senate, but you should be happy to know that they are co-sponsors of this bill and they're strongly supportive, and we have kept our group together. So our job is to work through amendments and then to call a vote. Unless some miracle happens, we will most likely have a split vote here. But under the Senate rules, and because of your work to win Georgia, then Senator Schumer will have the ability to bring the bill to the Senate floor, even with a split vote. We have to have the split vote, but he will be able to bring the bill to the floor. And from then, we'll probably have another meeting about what happens next. You guys know where I am. I'm in favor of abolishing the filibuster, but there's a lot more work that we can do because as we have all said from the beginning, failure is not an option. I don't know how much clearer the clarion call has to be than these voter suppression bills that we've seen introduced across the country. And I guess I'll just end with where I began with this democracy. My year started with that insurrection. That was the day after the Georgia race. That was when I knew I was taking over the Senate Rules Committee. And I started my day taking on Ted Cruz when he made the case against the Electoral College and against counting the votes the way they were supposed to be counted. And from there, the white supremacists, as you know, invaded the Capitol. And I ended my day at about 4 a.m, walking literally across broken glass with spray painting on the side with 2 young clerks carrying that mahogany box with the ballot to the House where the Speaker and the House leadership was waiting as we went to count those ballots and get that done. And then we went to the inauguration. And as I said that day, this is the day where our democracy picks itself up, dusts itself off, and moves forward as a country. And I'm not going to stop. And the way that we move forward is with the For the People bill. Because if you believe in democracy, which I know you all do, we simply can't allow, to end with Raphael Warnock's beautiful words, some people to tell some people they can't vote. So thanks for all you did. I need you there with me in spirit. It's not going to be easy. And when they make their cases that somehow this is bad, which we know it's good, that it's somehow going to create chaos, I tell them this: chaos is a 5-hour wait to vote. Chaos is the purging of voter rolls and modern day poll taxes. Chaos is one mail ballot drop box like they had in Texas in a county of 5 million people. Chaos is a North Carolina voter ID law that the Fourth Circuit found targets African Americans with almost surgical precision. And chaos is voters in Wisconsin waiting in line to vote for hours in the rain, wearing homemade face masks and plastic garbage bags. And that angry mob on January 6th, that was chaos. Ensuring the right to vote is never chaos. It is democracy. So thank you, guys. And I got to go back to reading these amendments and preparing to literally take on these guys all day. And I'm glad you're going to be with me in spirit. So thank you.
Senator Klobuchar, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. As you said, you got a lot of reading to do tonight, all the amendments that Ted Cruz has put forward. But our movement partners all want to thank you for your leadership on this foundational issue, right? We have to expand the electorate. We have to protect our democracy from right-wing attacks. And we are with you and all of the other Democrats on the Rules Committee tomorrow. We're with you in spirit, and we're going to help get this onto the Senate floor with you. So,
very good. Well, thank you. And I see you're in good hands with Jeff Merkley. I see him there on the screen. So, Jeff, I can't wait to see you tomorrow. And thank you, everybody.
Great. Well, Tafari, I'll hand the virtual microphone over to you to introduce Senator Merkley. And I want to remind our listening audience, there's about 5,000 people on the phones and online. If you have any questions, if you are on the phones, press *3, or if you're in the Zoom room, put your questions in the chat. If you're watching on social media, type it on Facebook. Tafari, over to you.
Thank you, Joseph, and thank you, Senator. So after the Rules Committee goes through the process, after the markup process, the next step is to get the For People Act to the Senate floor and passing it with simple majority. Ensuring that the filibuster does not get in the way of our top priority for both my organization's AFL-CIO and the Democracy Initiative. Sisters and brothers, rules can't be changed. It's time for our senators to use the rules to ensure debate and vote on bills like Senate Bill 1, the PRO Act, immigration reform, climate justice, gun violence prevention, and racial justice. But led by Senator Mitch McConnell, the other side has used and abused the filibuster rules to get massive tax cuts to the rich and run through conservative judges. We want the gavel, and Senate Democrats have the power to ensure that the rules are set up to work for all of us, not against working people. I'm so excited that we're going to hear more about this from our next speaker, Senator Jeff Merkley. Senator Merkley is a longtime champion for fixing the Senate rules so that they work for people like me and you. He has done a lot of legwork inside the Democratic caucus. And he's going to tell us a little more about their plan to ensure the filibuster does not kill Senate Bill 1 and the rest of our priorities. Please help me welcome our champion, Senator Jeff Merkley. Senator?
Tafari, thank you so much for the invitation to join you all tonight. But more than that, thank you to all the members of our revolution for being the force, the outside force that is saying to those in Congress, you have to get this done. This is a pivotal moment for the future of our nation. The stakes couldn't be higher. We saw on January 6th a Trump-inspired assault and an effort to burn the ballots of 80 million Americans. And that assault on the right of Americans to vote continues right up to this moment and will continue until we pass the For the People Act. And tomorrow we're going to see it on full display in the committee because you're going to have Democrats there saying, look, we must defend the freedom of every American to vote, the right of every American to vote. Our history is a history of the powerful trying to prevent different groups from voting. We've struggled with it in and out. We thought we had finally gotten to the point where that was a fundamental understanding in 1965. Think about what happened that year. You had the march over the Edmund Pettus Bridge. John Lewis, who has championed voting rights for so long, who passed away not so long ago, beaten up on that bridge, fighting for the right of every American to vote. But here we are with 6 states already having passed in the last couple months restrictions on the ability of Americans to vote. We have another 6 states, Ohio, New Hampshire, Iowa, Arizona, Texas, Ohio, and Iowa, those 6, they are on the verge of passing restrictions. So a dozen states that are saying 1965, the freedom of every American to cast a ballot, we are ready to strike that down. And just as pre-1965, the target is communities of color. The target is poor communities. And additional targets include college students and Native Americans, tribal groups. This is just an assault on the pulsing heart of Americans. So defending the right to vote, the freedom to vote, stopping billionaires from buying elections, and stopping gerrymandering. Republicans have been bragging that gerrymandering gives them 15 extra votes in the House of Representatives. 15 extra votes can be the difference of who's in the majority. And they want to increase that gerrymandering in the coming redistricting, which is right around the corner, to 25 votes in the House. So taking on these fundamental corrupting forces. Well, to get this done, we have to proceed to win the For the People bill on the Senate floor. It's going to take all 50 Democrats coming together and saying, how do we get this done? And that includes, one, that everybody's ready to vote for the bill, and second, that we're ready to adjust the rules so that Mitch McConnell does not have a veto. Now, as Tafari mentioned, when Mitch McConnell wanted to put corporate judges onto the Supreme Court, he changed the rules. When he wanted to get corporate judges to pack the lower courts, he changed the rules so that 4 confirmations a day could be done by changing the number of hours that are required for debate. When he wanted to do tax cuts for the rich, he changed the rules so reconciliation could be used for tax cuts for the rich. Part of what I've asked you to do in the past, and I'll keep asking you to do, is say to members of Congress, say to your senators, say to your House members, no excuses. When Mitch McConnell wanted to get stuff done for the powerful and privileged in this country, he changed the rules. He adjusted the rules. Democrats have to be at least as fierce in fighting what they campaign on, and that is the pillars for American families to thrive on healthcare, housing, education, living wage jobs, ending discrimination, taking on environmental issues, and defending the integrity of our elections on which everything else depends. And so no excuses, that outside force rally. We are on a short timeline here. It is just 2 months before we are into July, and the Senate normally breaks in August. We have to get this done by August. We have to get it done by August. So we're not talking about something 6 months away, 8 months away, 10 months away. 2 months from now, we need to be on the floor fighting for this bill, which means this has to be the top priority that you're all working on. And I know you are, and thank you. And I just want to encourage you to keep up the passion, keep up the effort, because everything else we want to fight on, that housing, healthcare, education, good paying jobs, labor laws, environmental laws, Equality Act, all those things depend on us having the For the People Act getting passed. You know, Dr. King once said, human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step toward the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and the struggle, the tireless exertions and passionate concern of dedicated individuals. So that's inside the building and outside the building. We have to be in that tireless, passionate mode in these 2 months to come. So let's keep working together. Let's spread the message, no excuses, get it done, defend the Constitution, defend the freedom to vote, the right to vote that so many have struggled for so long over our history. Thank you so much for being essential partners in this effort.
Thank you, Senator. So we have a couple of questions coming from people. So I hope you have time to take a couple of questions.
I'd be happy to.
So the first question is from Belen from Arizona. She asks, if we fail to pass Senate Bill 1 and the John Lewis voting rights bill, with what's going on so many states, what will the consequences be in the midterm elections for Democrats?
If we fail to pass this bill, first of all, there'll be a dozen states that put restrictions on ability of people to vote. And what is their game plan? What are they trying to do? Well, here it is. They know on election day, they can make it very hard for certain communities to get to the ballot by reducing the number of precinct places, putting them in places that don't have parking, proceeding to have them understaffed, putting out false information about where the precinct voting places are. They know that it's easy to really cheat people out of their right to vote on election day. The antidote to that is early voting and vote by mail. So that is why President Trump, former President Trump, and why his Republican followers today are so intent on attacking this bill, because they want to take away the ability to have early voting and vote by mail so they can manipulate the outcome on election day. You think about all these close elections. There's the control of the House will depend on elections that swing within 2 to 3 points. That's same in the Senate. So if you can obstruct voting by those who tend to vote for the people rather than for the powerful, then the powerful will win on election day. Here's what else will happen. And that is our grassroots is going to be so discouraged if we fail to get this passed. They're going to say, look, we did incredible work. Well, think of what we did in Georgia. Nobody really thought we could win those 2 Senate races in Georgia. Look how every effort went into that, and we pulled off this miracle through passionate, just grassroots effort. And we can't do that and then have the 50 votes, control of the Senate, control of the House, control of the presidency, and have those who we elected fail us. And there'll be this sense of burnout. So we are going to lose massively in the next election if we don't get this passed. And we'll lose massively because we're burned out by failure to deliver, and we'll lose massively because new voting restrictions. Think of this. In the last 40 years, there have been 4 years in which Democrats controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House. Well, right now, we have 2 years in which we're controlling the White House, the Senate, and the House. That means we might not have this window of opportunity for another 20 years, 1 year every 10. So I'm saying to you, this is a critical moment. We have to get it done, and it will be not just a disaster for all the policies we're fighting for, but it will be a disaster for the 2022 elections if we fail, and we cannot fail.
Thank you so much, Senator. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for staying on this. If it's not for your effort, really, in addition to this, a lot of things that we care about, the PRO Act, climate justice, all of those things have no shot whatsoever from getting done or getting 60 votes. So I really, really appreciate it. And on behalf of all our coalition members, I just want to say thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you to all of you. Let's get it done. We can't fail, and together we will succeed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So the Democracy Initiative, our revolution, and the AFL-CIO and others are circulating a petition to end the filibuster. We have a goal of gathering 1 million signatures. The good news is we already have over 300,000 signatures in hand. We need all of you on this call, on this webinar today, to sign on. Not only that, we're gonna ask you to share the link that is on the chat, and I'll read it for those of you who are on the phone, and to ask your friends, your network, your family members, everybody to sign the petition to end the filibuster. That's what it's gonna take. So those of you who are on the phone, go to ourrev.us/filibuster to download the petition. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to my partner now.
Thank you so much, Tafari. That is Tafari Gabbray. Just wrapped up a conversation with Senator Jeff Merkley. Before that, I spoke with Senator Amy Klobuchar. For those of you who are joining, we're talking about something that's foundational, protecting the right to vote so that we can advance progressive policies like healthcare for all, like tackling climate change, like growing the labor movement. But first, we got to make sure that right-wing Republicans don't undermine us. So with that, want to pivot to introducing some of the movement leaders that we're working with to make sure that this For the People Act has broad support as it gets marked up in the Rules Committee, as Senator Klobuchar talked about, and when it gets to the floor, as Senator Merkley talked about. So I want to bring up the first of those movement leaders. She is a longtime civil rights leader. She is president and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation and a convener of the Black Women's Round Table. Welcome, Sister Melanie Campbell.
Thank you, Joseph, and thank you, Tafari, and the whole family at the Democracy Initiative and everybody on this call. It is an honor to be here in this fight with you. So we'll talk briefly about the filibuster and what it means as an African American, as a woman, and just a little quick history about this filibuster and why we see it for the history of it is fundamentally racist. The filibuster is a Jim Crow era relic that truly is impeding modern progress and legislation that we're all talking about tonight, and we all fought for in the middle of a pandemic to get out to vote for. We voted for the change that would affect all of our lives. And for the Black community, we know we voted. What did we vote for? Why did we get out here and risk our lives? We risk our lives and why the Black Lives Matter movement stay out there in those streets and continue to stay in those streets. And all of us are. We know it's time to end racial injustice in this country. The voting rights, having a strong voting rights in this country is fundamental to being able to address that. It's fundamental to address criminal justice and policing reform. It's fundamental if we're talking about continue to do what needs to be done around issues around COVID-19. And my colleagues have already laid out so much of what is at stake. And if it started out as something that was put in place because it was racist, then that's what? Then we need to get rid of it. It is so time for it. Our young people are looking at all of us from all these generations and say, what are we going to do? In our watch, it is time. It is time for our leaders who we helped make, and Senator just talked about the fact that we voted, we gave, and I'm nonpartisan, so let me be clear, but I'm just also an analyst. And I'm saying we voted and gave the Democrats all the House, the Senate, and the White House, and the White House. So guess what? We voted for you to make change and be bold about it. And so if we're going to see any change, I do not believe, based on what has happened. I'm a native Floridian. I live up there in the Beltway, and I run out of there with every chance I get. But the reality is I grew up in Florida, and I'm down here in Florida now, where this governor is showing what's happening in these 43 states that we keep hearing about, 43, 44 states, where they're changing the rules because they don't like the results of it. And so so you're seeing what's happening in Washington as well as in the states. And what it is saying is we will do anything to keep power, including crumbling our democracy. So the filibuster is a rule that needs to change if we want the change that we sought last year. And I'll stop there, much more to say, but bottom line is the filibuster is rooted in racism, and it's time for that change to take place. And we are calling on our elected officials who are in leadership over there to go ahead and do what needs to be done so they can move the kind of legislation that will make lives better for not just African Americans, but as a Black woman, I have to say it, as for Black folks and brown folks and folks from all stripes, folks who just want to have a better shot at life and deserve that. Get rid of the rule that blocks that. So get rid of that filibuster today.
Sister Melanie Campbell, leader of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, talking about the racist history of the filibuster and how our movement needs to stand up in this moment to get rid of it. So with that, thank you for joining us. Tafari, over to you to introduce our next guest.
I'm still not a pro on getting off mute. Thank you, Melanie, for that, and thank you for calling it out for what it is, a racist Jim Crow era that rule. That being said, it is really my pleasure. Now we're going to hear from one of my brothers, Chris Shelton, president of the Communication Workers of America, CWA. As you all know, CWA is a founding partners of the Democracy Initiative and a strong anchor in the AFL-CIO's PRO Act and Senate Rule Reform campaign. And Chris, brother, I'll turn it over to you to tell us what we need to do. Chris?
Thanks, Tafari. Thanks for inviting me to join the call tonight. A special shout out to the CWA members out there for joining us. And thanks to all of you for working to build a more progressive future. I'm glad I could join to talk about the critical issue of ending the death grip that the filibuster has on any progressive legislation that will improve working Americans' lives. And make no mistake, if McConnell has the filibuster in his pocket, he is going to do everything he can to stop any kind of progressive movement that can take place in this country. For over a decade now, CWA has been helping lead the fight to end this unconstitutional and racist relic of the Confederacy. We joined together in 2009 with important progressive partners like the Sierra Club, Greenpeace, Common Cause, and the NAACP to demand that Senate Democrats take the steps necessary to end this minority veto once and for all. People thought we were crazy at the time. They said there was no way we'd ever change the rules of the Senate, that the filibuster was too ingrained in the system. But we proved them wrong, brothers and sisters. Late in 2013, our progressive coalition achieved an important milestone when Senate Democrats, led by Harry Reid, voted to get rid of the ability to filibuster presidential nominations. We didn't achieve our ultimate goal of getting rid of the filibuster entirely, but it was an important step. We achieved this victory because our coalition was broad. It was comprised of many voices of the progressive community, and we were organized. We made our voices heard and demanded that Senate Democrats act every time the Republicans would block nominations or popular and much needed attention. That's why I have confidence that once again, we will be successful. This time, the labor movement is united in eliminating the filibuster, especially if Senate Republicans use the filibuster to block the PRO Act. The PRO Act is a piece of legislation that would transform the way workers are able to have a voice on the job by exercising their rights to organize and engage in collective bargaining. The PRO Act would update our 85-year-old labor laws with a number of important provisions that would give workers more power in our economy. This rewrite of labor laws is long, long overdue. Every other time we have come together to update our labor laws to give workers more power and more of a voice, the filibuster has blocked us every single time, but not now. We're going to fight like hell to get the support of all 50 Senate Democrats for the PRO Act. We're going to see what we can get done through reconciliation to strengthen workers' rights. But to get the transformative changes to our labor laws that American workers have needed for so long, we must get rid of the filibuster once and for all. For too long, it stood in the way of economic and racial justice in our country. Not anymore. Our mighty coalition is a majority of Americans. What we are fighting for is popular. We will take to the streets if necessary to reclaim our democracy and end the stranglehold of Mitch McConnell and the Senate Republicans on meaningful progress for working families. Brothers and sisters, it's time to stop busting unions and bust the filibuster. Are you with me? Are you with me? Let's do it, sisters and brothers. Let's get out there and build this powerful movement to once and for all finally get rid of the filibuster. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. That was fiery. I'm all fired up, ready to go. So, Chris, we have one question for you. We have several questions, but I'm just picking one for you. We have a question here from Illinois. It says, we haven't seen meaningful labor law reform in decades. In fact, we have seen the opposite, chipping away at rights at work for workers. What do we have to do to make sure that this time is different?
What we have to do, brothers and sisters, is what I just said. Because if we don't bust the filibuster, they're going to keep busting unions forever until unions are gone in this country. It's been 85 years. It's time to get labor laws in this country changed. And the only way we're going to be able to change them is to end the filibuster. So we got to fight like hell. We got to call Congress. We got to go in the streets. We got to do everything we can to make sure that they understand that we got to get rid of the filibuster.
Thank you so much, brother. And now I'll turn it over to Joseph.
Thank you, Chris Shelton. Thank you, Tafari. Look, a lot of people are asking, what can I do? Well, the first thing is you can take action on our coalition petition. Our goal is to gather over 1 million signatures and deliver them to the Senate. And the link is in the chat. Sign it, share it with your friends. We need to show Senate Democrats that our movement is committed to ending the racist filibuster and ushering in progressive legislation like the PRO Act, protecting the right to organize that Chris just talked about. But we won't get to the PRO Act if we don't get rid of the filibuster. We won't get to the For the People Act if we don't get rid of the filibuster. And the other thing that we're not going to get to is transformational change on the climate catastrophe that is confronting our nation and our globe. Next up to discuss this is Eric Pica. He is the president of Friends of the Earth and a board member of the Democracy Initiative. Welcome to our town hall, Eric.
Thank you, Joseph, and thank you to our revolution. And I just want to thank the Friends of the Earth members and volunteers who are at home watching this. This is a really awesome gathering of folks wanting to end the filibuster once and for all. Once again, my name is Eric Pica, and I'm president of Friends of the Earth. and Friends of the Earth is a national environmental advocacy organization with a mission to champion a just and healthy world. And we're also part of the world's largest federation of grassroots environmental groups with Friends of the Earth groups in 70 countries around the world. So I don't need to name them, but I will. Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Maria, record flooding in the Midwest, record cold in Texas and the South, dire warnings of a bad fire season beginning in the West, Black, Indigenous, and people of color from across the United States and frankly, the world, taking on the brunt of climate change and the pollution that it's causing it. Our environment, our climate, and our democracy is in crisis. The solutions to the climate crisis is passing broad-based legislation based in justice, like the Green New Deal, the Thrive Agenda, a climate policy that represents our international fair share by radically reducing our climate pollution while helping countries around the world do the same. And once for all, ending all the fossil fuel subsidies with the End Polluter Welfare Act that we talked about on this call a couple months ago with the awesome Our Revolution members. Some of this we can do through the budget reconciliation, but that's frankly not enough. The solutions to the climate crisis, like the effort to save our democracy with S1, the For the People Act, are being blocked by the filibuster. Senators like Mitch McConnell that deny the science of climate change use the filibuster. Senators like Mitch McConnell that are backed by the fossil fuel interests use the filibuster. Senators like Mitch McConnell that deny the right to vote use the filibuster. And senators like Mitch McConnell that seek to rig our elections use the filibuster. That's why Friends of the Earth believes that the fight to end the filibuster is the fight for climate change solutions. That the fight to end the filibuster is the fight to create the renewable energy jobs of the future. That the fight to end the filibusters is the fight to end the over 100 years of fossil fuel subsidies that the US government has been giving to the biggest polluters on the planet. That's why Friends of the Earth believes that the fight to end the filibuster is the fight to end the generations of dumping toxics on Black and brown communities across the country and around the world. This is why Friends of the Earth is deeply engaged in the fight to end the filibuster with organizations from across the progressive movement and on this call. The fight to end the filibuster, and I don't say this lightly, is the most important environmental fight of our generation. Without ending the filibuster, we will not get the transformational change that fundamentally changes and alters how we use, consume, and produce energy to make the climate safe for future generations. And fighting to save our climate is intricately linked with fighting to save our democracy, because the same communities that are being disenfranchised with the right to vote are the same communities that are being dumped on by polluters around the country. They disenfranchise the vote and their rights, and then in return, they become the dumping ground for toxins and pollutions. That's why Friends of the Earth is proud to join this petition drive to get 1 million people to end the filibuster. And we have to end the filibuster to protect our democracy and to protect our planet. And so I need every environmental supporter, every person who believes in climate change, every person who supports an environmental group to make this a priority. We must, as environmentalists and people who are trying to solve the climate crisis, we must end the filibuster now. Thank you.
That was Eric Pica. He is the head of Friends of the Earth, and he talked about, again, the importance of unrigging Senate rules so that our movement can get on with creating the progressive America that we are organizing to create. Eric, a follow-up question from one of our viewers who watched the recent call that we did on fossil fuel subsidy. Can you give us an update on what's happening on that issue on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, it's awesome. So just as Representative Ro Khanna had announced, We had this awesome Earth Day hearing in the House Government Reform Environment Subcommittee that launched the whole effort. And so we had folks like, we had folks around the country dialing in, participating in the press conference. And so we are off and running to make sure that we get the subsidies eliminated in the budget reconciliation package. But that's not enough, though. Well, we have to push harder. But we are off to a strong and running start, and the co-sponsorship drives are beginning right now because we are going to eliminate the fossil fuel subsidies this year.
Amen. We're in that fight with Friends of the Earth. And Eric, thank you for joining us tonight and talking about the importance of getting rid of the filibuster to advance climate justice. Tafari, over to you, brother.
Thank you. So our last presenter tonight was Maurice Mitchell. Maurice is a top leader in the movement for Black Lives and the national director of the Working Families Party, where he is using his extensive experience organizing for racial, social, and economic justice to foster a diverse working class movement. Please welcome my brother, Maurice Mitchell.
Brother Tafari, thank you so much. Brother Joseph, so happy to be in this struggle with you and everybody assembled here all over the country. Now, America is a complicated place, right? It's a complicated country. You might think of it as a simultaneously wonderful and terrible place at times. Wonderful and terrible at the same time. On one hand, wonderful and really miraculous because it's the world's first attempt at a multiracial democracy, and it's chock full of amazing people who have done noble things over the centuries, including the heroic people that sacrificed so much in order to expand the very definition of liberty and justice. On the other hand, terrible in how we ignored our true history of violence and the hierarchy of human worth that has defined us for so many centuries, from the indigenous genocide to slavery. Now, when I think about the movement for Black Lives accomplishments, and there are many, the one I think is most vital and so important to this conversation is that it opened up the eyes of so many Americans to our history. That's the first step in changing the future. And as I think about this filibuster fight, it's very much part of that same opening of our eyes to our true history. The filibuster, as we heard, served one basic purpose over its long history: the defense of Jim Crow segregation, the blocking of civil rights. And actually, that changed a little when Mitch McConnell arrived. It was too late for him to defend Jim Crow of the past. So we used it to block Barack Obama's governing agenda every step of the way. Now, it's fine for the minority party to be heard. We all support that, but it's not okay for them to have a veto. Now, whether your number one concern is climate change or workers' rights or something else, none of it will happen without an end to the filibuster. Not the PRO Act to give working people the rights they deserve on the job, not the Green New Deal to give our children and our grandchildren a future, not the path to citizenship that we know is the right road for immigrants to travel, not transformation to the criminal legal system that so many marched and fought for. None of it could happen if the filibuster is allowed to stand as it is. The For the People Act will definitely face a filibuster with Republican senators talking for days and weeks around the clock. Now, look, let them talk. While they're talking, we must mobilize millions and millions of Americans to demand that the Democratic majority call the question and simply say no to what I and many of us like to call the McConnell veto. The Republicans will have their chance to make their case in the talking filibuster, but the Democrats must bring talking to a close and move to a vote. The For the People Act is just a start. This, as they say on the streets, is what democracy looks like if we fight for it. Thank you. Tafari, I think you're still on mute.
Like I said, that's word of the year. The word of the year. So there is a question here which practically says, why so many Americans don't know that history of the filibuster. So many Americans think the filibuster is in the Constitution, even though it's not in the Constitution. So as our organizers, Maurice, what is our call to actually explain to people that this was a Jim Crow era rule, and what should we be doing?
Well, that's a great question. And, you know, if you look at any of our issues, our opponents on the far right, our opponents in corporations, they always benefit from decontextualizing, from taking our issues outside of the context of history, outside of the context of all of the race, class, and gender dynamics we live through every single day. So they love to just talk about the filibuster and just have it be this somehow sacrosanct thing that's always existed. We can't talk about history. We can't talk about the context. That's where we come in. That's where organizing comes in, where we share our people's history, where we talk about the fact that all of these things have everything to do with power, have everything to do with the ruling class trying to keep control and trying to maintain power and trying to concretize their power. And we have to bring in the history of race and class and gender. That's the work of organizing and political education that only we can do in our communities, with the rank and file of our labor unions, with our grassroots organizations, telling the true experience of the true history of our people. We can never expect the corporations or people that have so much to lose from our people hearing that information, from sharing that information. So of course, the Republicans are going to tell this story about how the filibuster should always be in place, but it only changes when they want it to change. And they've changed it many times, right? There's a little asterisk next to it. And we want to tell the true story about how the filibuster has been used by the minority in order to slow down progress. And that's one of the main reasons why we need to challenge it.
Thank you so much, Maurice, and really appreciated having you here and hearing your voice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
you. So, sisters and brothers, as we wrap up, we should be prepared for Senate Majority Leader Schumer and the 50 Democrats plus the Vice President to use their majority to put Senate Bill 1 on the floor. This will then allow discussion, debate, and amendments. The initial motion or substitute motions or directives from the leader will detail how S1 will proceed. But we should expect round the clock, day and night, 7 days a week discussion on the legislation with some interruptions for other business like nominations. Sisters and brothers, this is unprecedented for decades. And it's fitting that for the People Act is the reason to use the rules versus be abused by the rules. Our preparation as progressive groups is key, since we'll need to mobilize millions in support for the People Act, for the expansion of voting rights, for public financing of our elections, and the disclosures of campaign contributions, and on and on and on. We cannot wait until this unfolds for the right wing will out-mobilize us. We'll also need to mobilize so that at some point debate is going to end, and there is a vote on the floor. This is called the final culture, and can be accomplished by same majority if they pass such a motion. With that being said, sisters and brothers, we are at the crossroads. You all know what's happening around the country. The other side is not waiting around, because we elected a young Jewish man and an African-American preacher in Georgia. They decided to make it a felony to give water for people who are studying online. If we are gonna have any shot of protecting our democracy, we got a 2-3 months window here, sisters and brothers. And we gotta put all of it online. All of it online. like Senator Merkley said, no excuses. No excuses for my daughter to grow up in an environment that's not polluted. I don't want to hear any excuses for workers not to have democracy at the workplace. There is no excuses for us not to exercise our democracy at the ballot box, as we're guaranteed to. So brothers and sisters, it's on all of us. The first thing you need to do is sign the petition, pass it on, ask others to sign the petition, and don't take no excuses whatsoever. With that, I'll turn it over to Joseph for some announcements.
Tafari, thank you so much. Democracy Initiative, Friends of the Earth, Communication Workers of America, Working Families Party, the Movement for Black Lives, the National Coalition for Black Civic Participation, thank you. And to our elected representative, Jeff Merkley and Amy Klobuchar, thank you for joining us. I want to conclude. A lot of people, once again, are asking what they can do. Well, a couple of things. Again, take action, sign the petition. And I want to give you a sense of how our Revolution members and our allies are organizing around the country in strategic places to make sure we make progress on the filibuster, on the For the People Act, on labor, on environmental rights. On Wednesday, because of our members, our Revolution's movement builders, we have just onboarded our very first West Virginia organizer. And on Wednesday, she's going to host an organizing meeting to call on Senator Joe Manchin and Shelley Capito to pass the PRO Act. The rally's being held in Wheeling, the home of legendary labor leader Walter Reuther, who once said that the filibuster was a graveyard of civil rights legislation and called for its abolishment. We're going to hold a rally in West Virginia on Tuesday. Then on Thursday, our Revolution and the Progressive Democrats of America is holding an emergency organizing meeting in Arizona because we're calling on Kristen Sinema and Mark Kelly to stand with the people. You can tune in here. And that call is preparation for something that I think is remarkable. Our members, PDA members, others are organizing in Arizona to get the Arizona Democratic Party to pass a resolution that is going to come up for a vote on May 22nd that is calling on Mark Kelly and Kristen Sinema to support Joe Biden's agenda and eliminate the filibuster. It's the Democratic Party of Arizona calling on their senators to get in line. Also on Thursday, you can tune in to the American Constitutional Society. They're hosting a virtual panel called Filibustering Progress, to reform or not to reform. And our co-host, Tafari, is going to be part of that panel. And then on Saturday, the Democracy Initiative's training and movement building coordinator, Brittany Baxter, is going to do a teach-in. And that link is in the chat if you want to learn more about what you can do. And right now, I want to close. We're at the middle of the hour at 9:30 East Coast. And I want to again thank everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you to all of the movement builders, members of our Revolution, all of our coalition partners. This is the beginning of the next phase of struggle. And want to thank all of you for being aligned individually and organizationally, because alignment in terms of mission is critical to organizing to win. And here at our Revolution, we have a chant that we close with. And I want everyone to get off mute, all of the panelists, and join me. When we organize,
We win.
When we organize,
We win.
when we organize.
We win.
Good evening, America. Let's organize to win this fight. Good night.
Good night.